Did your fountain pen just stop writing? Are you experiencing no ink flow? Or is your pen leaking ink uncontrollably? You've come to the right place. In this video, I'll give you some quick tips to help get your pen writing again. My name is Tom Otto for Goldspot Pens. In my 14 years of experience writing and selling fountain pens, I've helped troubleshoot many pen problems. I like to share the most common issues that can be easily fixed without any nib repair knowledge. One of the most frustrating experiences in using any tool is when it doesn't work when you want it to. Most fountain pens should start writing right away, but there may be certain instances when you might need a little bit of help to get your pen's ink flow going again. If you uncap your pen, start writing, and nothing comes out, here's what I would do step by step. First, check the ink level. Naturally, a fountain pen isn't going to write anymore if it's completely out of ink. For most cartridge converter pens, you'll want to remove the section from the barrel and check the converter or cartridge to see if there's any more ink in the reservoir. If the reservoir is empty, then it's time to fill up once more. If there's still ink sloshing around inside, like in this LZ28 converter here, then we need to move to step 2 to get your ink flowing again. So if there's still ink in the pen but the nib isn't writing, the nib itself might have dried out. Most likely there's still more ink in the feed, but it hasn't reached the tip of the nib just yet. That's when we can employ a simple technique to encourage ink flow. So what you want to do is give the pen a shake over paper towel or a scrap piece of paper, then gently give a tap tap taparoo on the paper with a figure 8 scribble to get that line going again. One point I will advise here, don't press. An inexperienced writer might be inclined to put additional pressure on the nib to force the ink to flow. This technique may work for ballpoint pens but spells disaster for fountain pens. Pressing hard will most likely cause the tines to splay and for ink flow to stop permanently. If the shake and tap method doesn't remedy the poor ink flow, wet the nib with some tap or distilled water. The water will reactivate any dried ink in the nib and should get a hard starting pen writing again. After wetting the nib, the ink may come out a little light at first and then return to the color's full saturation. If the pen runs dry again, then I would take a more aggressive approach and flood the feed with ink. Flooding the feed forces ink from the reservoir to the nib. You would accomplish this by accessing your pen's filling mechanism. If it's a cartridge converter, open the pen and turn the converter's knob or squeeze the cartridge gently. If the pen is a piston fill, like this one here, or otherwise, operate the filling mechanism to force ink out, just enough to become visible on the feed. For extra care and cleanliness, make sure there is a paper towel or scrap paper nearby to catch accidental ink drops. If the fountain pen still won't write after flooding the feed, then I suggest a full clean out. If you need help with cleaning your fountain pen, watch our video on how to clean your fountain pens in the card above. So far, we have focused on what to do when your fountain pen won't write and you have little to no ink flow. What about the opposite? What should you do when your fountain pen is leaking ink? First, we need to find out where the excess ink is coming from. Take a paper towel and wipe the pen to see where it picks up the ink color. If there is ink on the grip section, check inside the cap. Twist a paper towel into a point and wipe the inside of the cap, like so. If the cloth becomes fully saturated, then we have a leaky nib. In that case, you'll want to make sure that the nib and feed are fully set into the section. This one thankfully does not have any ink in the cap. The nib and feed are usually part of a screw-out housing. If the housing is not screwed in all the way, it might lead to a leak. So you want to make sure that that housing is tightened by gripping the nib and feed and turning until it's tight. Here you have a narwhal Schuylkill, and I have the nib clutched with the crook of my finger and then putting my thumb over the feed, and then I'm just screwing the body on, screwing it here until it becomes all the way tight, and then stopping when it stops here. And that should give you a full tight seal. If it's a little off and it was a little bit loose and it wasn't on there all the way tight, then it may happen where some ink might leak through the nib and feed. Also, the nib and feed are friction fit into the screw-out housing, so it would be advisable to make sure that they are fully set into the housing by gripping the nib and feed and pushing them all the way into the housing. So if you see this narwhal here, this narwhal, I could just pull the nib and feed straight out. What I want to do is I will then set that back in the same way it came out, and then just push it all the way in until everything just stops and it's fully set into the section. If only a little bit of ink was found inside the cap and around the grip section, a slight jostle or bounce might have caused the pen to release a few drops of ink while being carried around. Not a big deal. It happens sometimes when carrying your pens around everywhere you go. If ink is found at the juncture of the grip section and the barrel, it might mean that there is a leak from inside the barrel. For a cartridge converter pen, carefully check the connection of the cartridge or converter to the pen. If the connection is loose or covered with ink, that will tell you that there is a seal that's compromised there. Replace the converter or cartridge with a new one. If ink is leaking from a barrel of a non-cartridge converter pen like this piston-filling Sailor 1911 Rialo, then there's a bigger problem to address. Since there are no parts to replace, you have to contact the brand's warranty service repair department to see if they can help fix the barrel or the filling mechanism. If you find excessive ink on the nib, that's called nib creep, and it really isn't a problem. Before I go, here are some bonus quick tips if you are having ink flow problems. Make sure to have your fountain pen capped when not in use. Leaving your pen uncapped for periods longer than a minute may cause issues with hard starting or poor ink flow. Also, leaving an uncapped pen on a desk surface may spell certain doom if it rolls off the table. Just like buffalo chicken wings may not agree with your digestive system, a particular fountain pen ink may not agree with your pen. If you are experiencing flow issues, change the ink to see if it improves. Another variable to address is your paper. Toothy papers may leave fibers in the nib slit and cause trouble with skipping and poor ink flow. Change your paper and see if it improves. I'd love to read about your trickiest pen problems. Leave them in the comments and let us know if any of these tips helped you in troubleshooting your fountain pens. Whatever you do, just be sure not to make these unforgivable fountain pen mistakes I told you about here. Part of our Pens 101 series, see how to fill the most common types of fountain pens here. Subscribe to the Goldspot Pens channel for more helpful how-to videos right here. Thank you for watching and stay inky, my friends. Take care.